Sometimes the most dangerous hostility is not loud, not visible, not openly expressed. It is quiet, polite, and standing very close to you. Human relationships are layered, and not everyone who smiles with you stands with you. There are moments when the soul senses tension before the mind understands it. You feel drained after certain conversations. You feel subtly judged instead of supported. You feel smaller instead of seen. Hidden resentment rarely announces itself. It leaks through behavior, tone, and energy. The unconscious cannot fully hide what the conscious tries to mask. When someone secretly resents you, their support becomes selective. They clap when it is safe, but grow silent when you rise. Their praise sounds rehearsed, but their criticism is spontaneous. They offer advice that slows you down, not guidance that lifts you up. Notice the emotional aftertaste people leave behind. Truth often reveals itself. Their envy rarely says, "I dislike you." Instead, it says, "I am just being realistic," or "I am only trying to help." Watch how they respond to your growth. A person who carries hidden hostility struggles to celebrate your progress. They change the subject when you share wins. They introduce doubt where you found confidence. They magnify your risks and minimize your strengths. This is not honesty. It is disguised discomfort at your expansion. The threatened ego prefers your potential unrealized. Another sign appears in subtle contradictions. Their words say one thing, their micro-reactions say another. A tight smile, a delayed response, a passive remark wrapped in humor. The psyche leaks through cracks. Sarcasm becomes the socially acceptable weapon of concealed resentment. Jokes become rehearsals for truth. There is also the pattern of invisible competition. You did not enter a race, yet they are running beside you. They compare stories, redirect attention, and recenter every shared experience around themselves. Your struggle becomes their bigger struggle. Your success becomes their better success. Hidden hostility cannot tolerate equality. It must quietly outrank. Pay attention to boundaries. Secret resentment often shows up as disguised disrespect. They interrupt more than they listen. They dismiss your feelings as exaggeration. They step over limits and call it closeness. Where respect is absent, concealed anger is often present. Finally, trust your nervous system. The body recognizes emotional threat faster than logic does. If you feel guarded, tense, or subtly unsafe around someone who appears friendly, do not rush to self-doubt. Awareness is not paranoia. It is psychological intelligence. Not everyone who is near you is for you. And not every bond deserves permanent access to your inner world. Hidden resentment rarely announces itself through direct statements because the human psyche is skilled at disguise. Most people who carry negative feelings towards someone close to them will not risk open conflict or social exposure. Instead, the emotion seeps out indirectly through tone, timing, and emotional residue. You may not hear harsh words, yet you leave the interaction feeling strangely heavy. That weight is not imaginary. Emotional states are contagious, and resentment carries a particular psychological temperature, cool on the surface, burning underneath. When resentment is concealed, language becomes carefully managed, but energy becomes inconsistent. The person may say supportive phrases, yet their presence feels tight rather than open. Their responses come a fraction too late. Their enthusiasm feels measured instead of spontaneous. Human beings are highly sensitive to microsignals, facial tension, breath shifts, vocal strain. And even when the conscious mind overlooks them, the nervous system records them. This is why you sometimes feel unsettled without knowing why. The spoken message and the emotional signal do not match. Emotional after effects are often the clearest indicator. After genuine goodwill, you typically feel lighter, clearer, more stable. After concealed resentment, you often feel subtly diminished or drained. It can show up as second-guessing your words, replaying the conversation, or feeling a quiet drop in confidence. This happens because hidden hostility contains unspoken judgment, and judgment is psychologically penetrating even when unvoiced. The mind senses when it is being silently evaluated rather than warmly received. Another signal appears in conversational texture. Resentment affects curiosity. Someone who secretly resents you asks fewer sincere questions about your inner world. Their listening is functional, not engaged. They wait for their turn to speak rather than meeting you where you are. The exchange feels slightly transactional. There is politeness, but not presence. Attention without warmth feels like inspection rather than connection. There is also a pattern of emotional misattunement. Your joy is met with neutrality. Your concern is met with mild irritation. Your vulnerability is met with advice instead of understanding. This mismatch is not always deliberate. Sometimes resentment creates an unconscious distancing response. The person protects their ego by reducing emotional investment in you. The result is a relational flatness that contrasts with their behavior toward those they genuinely support. Hidden resentment often produces subtle friction in small moments, interruptions that feel unnecessary, corrections that feel slightly sharp, humor that lands with an edge. None of these alone prove hostility, but together they form a psychological pattern. The conscious mind explains each instance away. The emotional body does not. It keeps the ledger of feeling. Perception of emotional energy is not mystical, it is neurological and relational. Humans constantly read safety and threat through social cues. When someone's inner state conflicts with their outer behavior, the signal becomes distorted, and distortion creates unease. Learning to notice emotional after effects is therefore a form of relational intelligence. It shifts attention from what is said to what is transmitted, from performance to presence, from words to psychological impact. False support rarely looks like opposition. It looks like politeness, measured approval, and carefully rationed encouragement. On the surface, the person seems agreeable, even cooperative, yet something feels restrained in their praise and unusually fluent in their criticism. Genuine support has a spontaneous quality. It rises quickly and naturally when you succeed. Artificial support hesitates. It calculates. It offers recognition in controlled doses, as if afraid that too much affirmation might strengthen you beyond their comfort. Weak praise often sounds technically correct, but emotionally empty. The words are right, but the tone is thin. That is good, they say, without curiosity, without follow-up, without engagement. Real encouragement expands the moment. It asks, explores, celebrates detail. Weak praise closes the moment quickly. It is designed to acknowledge without investing. The psyche reveals itself in enthusiasm. You cannot convincingly fake energetic alignment for long. Where admiration is real, attention flows. Where it is false, acknowledgement is brief and quickly redirected. In contrast, criticism from such a person arrives smoothly and without strain. They do not search for critical observations. They retrieve them instantly. The speed is revealing. What is emotionally rehearsed emerges effortlessly. They can explain your risks, your flaws, and your limitations with impressive clarity. Their language becomes more animated when pointing out what might fail than when recognizing what is working. This imbalance exposes their inner orientation. The mind speaks most comfortably from its dominant attitude. Another feature of artificial support is asymmetry. Your achievements receive moderation. Your mistakes receive magnification. Small errors are treated as meaningful patterns. Temporary setbacks are framed as likely outcomes. Meanwhile, your progress is described as luck, timing, or external help. This reframing protects the other person from confronting your competence directly. By shrinking your success and enlarging your flaws, they restore their internal balance without openly opposing you. You may also notice that their critical feedback is presented as honesty or realism, is delivered with phrases like, "I am just being practical," or "someone has to say it." True constructive criticism includes proportion and care. It is timed well, specific, and supportive of growth. Reactive criticism is eager and global. It appears early, generalizes quickly, and leaves little room for possibility. Its hidden motive is not your improvement, but their emotional release. Emotional leakage appears in micro-reactions. When you share good news, there is a pause before their response forms. When you admit difficulty, their reply becomes more immediate and fluid. The nervous system does not celebrate what the ego resents. That fraction of delay is psychologically meaningful. It marks the gap between social expectation and authentic feeling. There is also a pattern of advisory discouragement disguised as protection. They warn you repeatedly, urge caution excessively, and highlight worst-case scenarios without being asked. Support that strengthens you says, prepare and proceed. Support that restrains you says, delay and doubt. The difference lies in whether the message increases your agency or reduces it. Over time, exposure to this dynamic creates confusion. You feel evaluated more than encouraged, managed more than backed. The relationship sounds supportive in language, but restrictive in effect. Psychological truth is measured not by stated intention, but by emotional consequence. Where praise is scarce and criticism is effortless, The inner stance is not solidarity, it is concealed resistance. Cret. Hostility often reveals itself most clearly in moments of your expansion. Growth acts like a mirror in relationships. It reflects not only your progress, but the emotional maturity of those around you. A person who carries hidden resentment may tolerate your struggles, but feel unsettled by your advancement. This discomfort is rarely admitted, even to themselves. Instead, it appears as subtle behavioral shifts when you begin to rise, improve, or move beyond an old version of yourself. When someone is quietly threatened by your success, their emotional rhythm changes around your achievements. Where you expect warmth, you receive restraint. Where you anticipate curiosity, you encounter neutrality. The conversation does not deepen, it shortens. They acknowledge your progress quickly and then move away from it, as if prolonged attention would increase their internal tension. Success in this dynamic becomes an awkward subject rather than a shared victory. Growth also disrupts unspoken hierarchies. Many relationships unconsciously organize themselves around roles. The helper and the helped, the stable and the struggling, the guide and the guided. When you outgrow the role someone assigned you, it can unsettle their identity structure. If their self-worth depended partly on being ahead of you, your progress feels like a loss to them. Instead of updating the relationship, hidden hostility tries to restore the old balance by minimizing your change. You may notice an increase in cautionary messaging. They begin emphasizing risks, timing problems, and potential downsides more than before. The language sounds responsible, but the frequency is revealing. Encouragement becomes conditional. Optimism becomes rare. This is not balanced guidance. It is emotional braking. The psyche that feels threatened attempts to slow what it cannot celebrate. Another sign appears in comparative framing. Your success is quickly linked to external factors, luck, privilege, connections, timing rather than effort or ability. This reframing reduces the psychological impact of your achievement. It allows the secretly hostile observer to maintain their self-image without directly denying your progress. Credit is redistributed away from your agency towards circumstance. There is often a subtle withdrawal of emotional availability. They become less responsive, less engaged, less present. Invitations decrease. Check-ins become infrequent. This distancing is a protective maneuver. Continued closeness would require authentic support, and authentic support would require confronting their discomfort. Distance is easier than inner adjustment. Hidden hostility may also express itself through shifting standards. Goals they once called impressive become basic. Milestones they once praised become expected. The threshold for their approval moves upward just as you reach it. This moving target preserves their internal superiority without open conflict. You keep achieving, they keep recalibrating what counts. Micro-expressions tell their own story. A tight smile, a forced laugh, a delayed congratulations. These are not dramatic signals, but they are consistent ones. The body reacts before the social mask fully forms. Emotional incongruence shows in timing and tension more than in vocabulary. Psychologically, another person, as growth, can activate unresolved insecurity. If they have avoided their own development, your movement highlights their stagnation. Rather than feel regret, the ego often converts that discomfort into quiet opposition. It is less painful to question your direction than to confront their inaction. In such relationships, your progress becomes emotionally expensive to share. You begin to edit your good news. You lower your visible excitement. You sense that your light requires dimming to maintain harmony. That adaptation is itself diagnostic. True allies make your growth easier to express, not harder to reveal. Sarcasm and humor can be healthy forms of expression, but they also serve as one of the most socially acceptable disguises for hostility. The human mind often hides what it does not want to confront directly, and negative feelings frequently travel under the cover of just joking. Because humor lowers defenses, it allows sharp truths and hidden resentments to pass through social filters without immediate resistance. The speaker gains plausible deniability while the emotional message still lands. This makes sarcasm a favorite tool of concealed negativity. A joke becomes psychologically revealing when it consistently targets the same person, the same weakness, or the same area of growth. Patterns matter more than single moments. Everyone teases occasionally, but repeated cutting humor aimed in one direction is rarely neutral. It signals preoccupation. The unconscious circles what bothers it. When someone repeatedly wraps criticism in humor, they are expressing something they do not feel safe or willing to state plainly. Tone carries the real payload. Two people can say identical words in a joking format, yet one feels warm and the other feels barbed. The difference lies in emotional charge. Hostile sarcasm has tension behind it, a slight edge, a compressed delivery, a satisfaction in the strike. Supportive humor, by contrast, feels expansive and mutual. You feel included, not reduced. The nervous system detects whether laughter is shared or whether it is being used as a shield for aggression. Another indicator is the reaction when the joke is questioned. When humor is clean, the speaker can comfortably clarify or apologize. When humor is a mask for resentment, defensiveness appears quickly. They may accuse you of being too sensitive or unable to take a joke. This reversal shifts attention away from the content and onto your reaction. It protects the speaker from examining their intent. Psychological projection often hides inside comic framing. Sarcastic humor also allows the ego to test boundaries. A disguised insult can be delivered and then measured by your response. If you accept it silently, the intensity may increase over time. If you resist, the speaker retreats behind humor as cover. This creates a safe channel for hostility to probe without commitment. It is emotional reconnaissance disguised as playfulness. Watch the timing of the jokes. Concealed negativity tends to surface at moments of your visibility. When you succeed, speak confidently, or receive attention, a sarcastic remark arrives to puncture the moment. It restores emotional balance for the resentful observer by reducing your psychological elevation. The joke functions as a leveling device. Content also reveals motive. Jokes that consistently diminish competence, appearance, ambition, or worth are not random. The unconscious selects themes that match its irritation. Even when laughter follows, the message leaves a trace. You may notice a brief drop in ease or confidence. That after effect is diagnostically important. Emotional impact is more truthful than social form. There is also a difference between humor that plays with situations and humor that targets identity. Situational humor says that moment was funny. Identity humor says you are the joke. The latter carries greater psychological weight and often conceals judgment. Repeated identity-based sarcasm is rarely harmless because open hostility risks consequences. Concealed hostility prefers camouflage. Humor provides that camouflage. It grants expression without ownership, impact without accountability, and release without vulnerability. Recognizing this dynamic requires attention not to laughter alone, but to direction, repetition, tone, and emotional residue. Unspoken competition often lives beneath the surface of friendly behavior, shaping interactions without ever being directly acknowledged. It does not announce itself as rivalry, it presents itself as coincidence, curiosity, or shared ambition. Yet the emotional structure is different. Instead of mutual growth, there is silent measurement. Instead of inspiration, there is tension. Constant comparison becomes the hidden scoreboard through which the resentful mind evaluates worth, position, and validation. The relationship turns into a quiet contest that only one person knows is happening. When someone carries in a resentment, your progress becomes data in their internal ranking system. They track your milestones, your recognition, your opportunities, and your relationships with unusual precision. This attention is not the same as supportive interest. Support celebrates without calculating. Comparison calculates without celebrating. You may notice that conversations frequently return to metrics: who achieved more, who moved faster, who received greater acknowledgement. The emotional tone feels evaluative rather than appreciative. Unspoken competition shows itself in conversational mirroring that feels slightly forced. When you share an experience, they respond with a bigger one. When you describe a challenge, theirs becomes harder. When you mention a plan, they reveal a more advanced version. This is not normal reciprocity. It is positional correction. The psyche attempts to restore superiority or at least equality by counterbalancing every disclosure. The exchange becomes less about understanding and more about matching or exceeding. There is also a subtle urgency in how they present their own achievements. Instead of arising naturally, their successes are inserted quickly, sometimes awkwardly, into unrelated discussions. Recognition is not allowed to emerge. It is placed. This suggests an internal pressure to maintain standing. Where there is ease, Accomplishment can wait its turn in conversation. Where there is resentment, acknowledgement feels scarce and must be secured quickly. Emotional reactions to your wins provide further evidence. Instead of clean enthusiasm, you see mixed signals, praise combined with redirection, congratulations followed by self-reference, approval paired with qualification. That is great. I did something similar, but the attachment of a comparative clause reveals discomfort with asymmetry. Your moment cannot remain solely yours. It must be psychologically redistributed. Another marker is selective engagement. They show heightened interest in areas where they outperform you and reduced interest where you excel. Topics shift toward their strengths and away from yours. This is not random preference, it is ego management. Attention flows where self-image feels safe and withdraws where it feels threatened. Unspoken competition also alters generosity. Information, contacts, or opportunities are shared cautiously rather than freely. Help becomes conditional or delayed. Cooperation feels negotiated instead of natural. The resentful competitor fears contributing to your advantage because your advantage registers as their loss, even when no real scarcity exists. Language patterns can reveal ranking behavior. Frequent use of comparative phrases, better, faster, more, earlier, higher, indicates an evaluative mindset. Even neutral subjects become framed in relative terms, turns into a ladder rather than a landscape. This linguistic habit reflects an inner orientation towards status positioning rather than relational connection. Psychologically, constant comparison grows from insecurity combined with proximity. The closer the person is to you in background, field, or stage of life, the more threatening your progress may feel to an unsettled ego. Similarity makes comparison easier and resentment more likely. Instead of processing their insecurity inwardly, they regulate it outwardly through silent rivalry. In these dynamics, warmth is replaced by watchfulness. The relationship feels monitored rather than shared. You sense that you are being measured, not met. That sensation is often accurate, because where inner resentment exists, connection turns into competition without ever speaking its name. The human body often recognizes psychological truth before the conscious mind forms a clear judgment. Long before you can explain why someone feels off, your nervous system has already begun adjusting. Muscles tighten slightly, breathing becomes more shallow, your responses grow more careful, and your mental spontaneity decreases. These reactions are not irrational, they are perceptual. The body continuously reads micro-signals in posture, tone, timing, and emotional congruence. When another person's outer behavior and inner state do not match, your system detects the mismatch and prepares defensively. This tension is usually subtle, not dramatic. It may appear as a faint guardedness in your chest, a reduced willingness to share, or a quiet fatigue that arises during or after interaction. You might notice that your humor becomes restrained or your words more filtered. This is not social shyness alone, it is adaptive calibration. The body is reducing exposure because it does not fully register safety. Psychological safety produces relaxation and cognitive openness. Psychological doubt produces contraction and monitoring. Behavior can be managed consciously, but emotional intent leaks through involuntary channels. Micro-expressions flash across the face in milliseconds. Vocal tone carries strain or warmth beyond vocabulary. Pauses reveal hesitation that words try to hide. Your sensory system processes these cues automatically. You are not consciously analyzing them, yet your physiology responds. This is why you can feel uneasy around someone who appears perfectly polite. The politeness is cognitive, the signal you receive is emotional. Another important element is recovery time. After interacting with genuinely well-intentioned people, the body returns quickly to baseline. Your thinking clears, your breathing normalizes, your mood stabilizes. After contact with someone carrying concealed negativity, recovery is slower. You may replay the exchange, feel mildly irritated without a clear cause, or experience unexplained tiredness. The body has engaged in low-level vigilance, and vigilance consumes energy. Fatigue without visible conflict is often a clue of hidden relational strain. There is also a shift in attentional behavior. Around psychologically safe individuals, attention flows outward. You listen, create, and respond fluidly. Around emotionally incongruent individuals, attention splits. Part of you engages, another part monitors. You track your wording, anticipate reactions, and pre-edit thoughts. This divided attention is a classic sign of perceived interpersonal risk. The mind assigns a background threat level and reallocates resources accordingly. The body also reacts to patterns, not isolated moments. One awkward exchange does not create reliable tension. Repeated subtle contradictions do. If supportive words repeatedly arrive with cold tone, if smiles repeatedly lack softness, if agreement repeatedly carries friction, the nervous system learns the pattern. It stops trusting the surface and prepares for the subtext. This learning is implicit and fast. Social conditioning often teaches people to override these signals in favor of appearances. You may tell yourself you are overthinking, being unfair, or imagining things. But somatic perception is not fantasy, it is data. It is simply preverbal data. The error is not in feeling tension. The error is in assuming tension must always be justified by obvious behavior. Much of human emotion operates below theatrical visibility. Trusting bodily awareness does not mean judging harshly or reacting impulsively. It means registering information without denial. The body does not deliver verdicts, it delivers signals. Those signals invite closer observation, clearer boundaries, and slower trust. When behavior and emotional presence align, the body relaxes naturally. When they diverge, the body prepares quietly. That preparation is not weakness or suspicion. It is intelligence expressed through physiology. So in the end, do not become paranoid, become perceptive. You are not asked to fear people, but to understand them. Not every strained smile hides hatred, and not every joke conceals a wound, yet your awareness is your protection. Learn to observe patterns instead of isolated moments, emotional impact instead of polished words, inner signals instead of outer performance. Maturity is not built by suspecting everyone. It is built by seeing clearly and choosing wisely. Let your standards be calm, your boundaries quiet, and your distance respectful when needed. You do not need confrontation with every hidden tension. You need clarity about where your energy belongs. Walk closer to those who expand your strength and step back from what repeatedly contracts it. Self-respect is the final filter, and inner clarity is the final defense.